Hey, good afternoon, Ajera NorCal users. Today I'm going to show you how to use Ajera in a live linked Excel environment. So when we're talking about working with Excel in a live linked environment, we're working through ODBC, Open Database Connectivity. It's a universal translator between two software programs, two or more. It allows, in this case, Excel to communicate to the Ajera database, which sits on a SQL database. First step in this process is to install the native ODBC driver if it's not already installed. Most Windows XP 7 and higher workstations have a version of the native driver installed by default. It's rare that I see that I find that you would have to install this outside of normal workstation setup procedures by your IT department. If that's the case, I've got a link for it on my website. You can find it under resources. So let's start by setting DSN. DSN is the data source name. It's basically a roadmap that tells Excel where to find Ajera. We do so by accessing the control panel. And we're going to go to Administrative Tools, Data Sources, ODBC. On a Windows 10 machine or even in a Windows 7 environment, you may see a choice for a 64-bit versus a 32-bit data source driver. You want to choose the 64-bit if it's an option for you. I'm going to go ahead and click Add. I'm going to select, in this case, the native client 11. And I'm going to type in here Ajera sample data. I should simply copy the name and use it for the description. I don't see the need to have it be different. Click that down arrow on the right of the cell, and what it's going to do is it's going to search out all instances of SQL Server on your network. And the one that you want is appended with the word Axiom. In this case, I have two, but the one I'm looking for is my newer server, which is the PE server. And I'm going to go ahead and select that, click Next. You guys probably will not see that overwrite message. It's simply because I have it here already. This is where you'll need to make a decision. Most of you guys will access with the SA username and password. If you don't know it, work with IT or get with your IT department or IT resource to gain access to that password. It could also be the same as your Ajera master password, but it does not have to be. I'm going to go ahead. I plugged in my username, SA, and my password. I'm going to go ahead and click Next. Click this box here at the top. I'm selecting which database. In this case, it's the sample data. If you guys are setting up a test environment, sample data is fine. Your production environment will most likely be just the one that says Ajera. In this case, I'm going to choose the sample data. I'm going to click Next. I'm going to click Finish. I'm going to test it. Test for OK. I'm going to click OK, OK, and close my control panel down. And now I'm ready to pull data into Excel. In this case, I'm going to use MS Query, which is an add-in to Excel. It's a mini version of Access, the way I view it. So from a blank worksheet, I'm going up to the Data menu. I'm clicking Other Resources, Microsoft Query. I'm going to pick the data source that I just set up, which is this one right here. I'm going to click OK. In this case, I'm going to use the wizard. On the next example, I'm not going to use the wizard. The wizard is very nice if you've got predefined views in the SQL database, which is what I'm going to use in this first exercise, because it makes the use of the wizard makes filtering and sorting a lot easier. So I'm going to go ahead and select my data source, click OK, plug in my password one more time, click OK. And I know that the name of the view, the SQL view that I've already got in there, starts with the U. I'm going to type the U, and it's the Gantt chart data. I'm going to expand that, and I'm going to pick some fields. This view is a view that I created specifically to pull data to use for a Gantt chart. I'm going to pick the start date, the duration days, the completion date, And I'm also going to pick some fields to sort on, which is the billing type, the sort order, and in order to filter, I'm going to pick the project ID if I want to filter it on one specific project. So I'm going to put my sort to the top, my two filters are towards the bottom, and the fields that I need from my Gantt chart are here in the first 4 positions. We go click next. You can see it says it's the Ajera or the query wizard, and it's asking for what data I want to filter. I've got the billing type here, and I'm going to choose equals, hit the drop down, and I only want billable phases. If I wanted all phases, I simply wouldn't filter on. Then I've got another filter that I'm going to use, project ID equals, and in this case I'm looking for 03138. Go ahead and click next. Sort order, it's going to be my sort order that I've predefined. I'm going to click next one more time. It's asking me if I want to bring this into MS Query and do further editing of it. I do not. I just want to bring it right back into Excel. I go ahead and click OK, pick a cell position, in this case A1 that I want to place my data, and click OK one more time. And as you can see, the data loaded very nicely into Excel. This is a live linked data set. I can validate that really quick by pulling up an instance of Ajera. Go to the command center. And actually, in this case, I realize I'm logged into the wrong set of data, so I'm going to switch it out real quick. And I'm going to type in sample, PDH, and then PDH. That's the login for the sample data. And I'm going to open up the command center a second time now. I'm going to go to project 03138, and I'm just going to append the name of that project with 123. I'm going to click Save, and then I'm going to watch this cell right up here that I've circled in silver, and I'm going to see if that doesn't change, does in fact change to Highland Shopping Center with appended with a 123. So I'm going to click the refresh button on this sheet, and there it is with the 123. So we are live linked with the Ajera data. From here, I can build a Gantt chart or do a number of other things. So that's by using the wizard, the query wizard, within Excel or within MS Query. Another way is to just access the data without the wizard, and by feeding the SQL commands in at the time that we're going to read the data, as opposed to reading an existing SQL view. So there's multiple ways this can be done. I'm going to show you a couple of them. So I'm going to switch over to sheet 2. I'm going to pull on some SQL text. This is essentially it's a view that I created earlier before I started recording the session. I'm going to go ahead and click copy there. I'm going up to the data menu one more time, other sources, MS Query, going to my sample data source one more time, clicking OK. Oops, and I realized that I don't want to use the wizard, so I'm going to start that one more time. Data, other sources, Microsoft Query, and I'm going to click that checkbox off, click OK, plug in my password, and I'm just going to close this little dialog box right here, and then up on the toolbar, there's a SQL command that I'm going to access. I'm just going to click it. It's asking me what's the SQL statement I want to use. I click paste because that's the SQL view I had created earlier. And you may notice that in there you can see I've got this filtered for the year 2015. So the one main advantage over doing it this way is I have access to the filter directly, as opposed to having to go in and modify my view to change the filter on that. Views have a weakness. Views are very handy for stuff like this and other applications, but they do have a weakness in that you cannot pass parameters to views. Parameters would be a start and a stop date, or a specific project number, or a specific employee, or any other number of fields. They can be used to filter data is the main thing, or they can be used to control data in other ways. In this case, I've got my filter hard filtered on the SQL statement, and then if I wanted to use it for 2016, I'd simply change that 5 to a 6, and I would be reading 2016 data. So I've got my SQL statement pasted. I'm going to click OK. Gives me a message that says it can't be represented graphically. That's okay. I'm going to continue anyway. And you can see now in MS Query, you're looking at MS Query, I've got a host of data. And I'm going to go to the File menu, return data to Microsoft Excel, again cell A1, and I'm just going to do this. This time I'm going to, instead of doing it in a table, I'm going to do it into a pivot table. I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And you can see here's a list of the fields that were available to me that I created in my view. I'm going to pick the amount, and then I'm going to pick the account ID and description. And you can see I've got now a list of accounts with the current income statement balance for the year 2015. When I'm working in Excel in this format, first thing I want to do is validate that I've got good numbers. So I'm going to run an income statement real quick. And I'm going to select 2015, hit refresh. And as you can see, that number and that number are the same. So I've got good results. Now I am in a pivot table environment, which allows me to change things up really, really nicely and flexible. So in this case, I want to see my income statement by month. So I'm going to put on the month column. I don't like the way that lays out, but I'm simply going to take the month and move it into the column label bucket. And you can see now it's doing a monthly spread. If I realize that I don't want the month, I can just simply drag this out or unclick it, one or the other. And let's say I want to do this now by department. So I take the department, throw that over there, and now I've got my 2015 spread by department. So with the pivot table, you can do a lot of different things. The results are endless, or the options are pretty much endless, only limited by your imagination or your ability to think things up. All right, so that's a pivot table using Excel. Now I'm going to do again with a pivot chart. I'm going to go back to the data menu one more time, other sources, MS Query, pick my data source one additional time, click OK. My password one additional time, and I'm going to show you in the next portion of this video how to store your password. Going back up to the SQL command, clicking paste, clicking OK. And this time I'm going to return the data as a pivot. Oh, and it looks like I messed that up, so I'm going to do that one more time. Bear with me while I catch up. And I'm going to go File. No, I'm sorry. I'm going to go to the SQL command, paste that, click OK, and then I'm going to return the data to Excel. Asking me what date cell do I want. I'm happy with A1 again. This time it's going to be a pivot chart. And for an example of the pivot chart, I'm going to click on the amount field, and then I'm going to click on, I've stored a revenue number in there, so I specifically just identified revenue in the column. And let's do it by month. And I have got, oh, I don't need the amount in there. That's why my chart's looking funny. There we go. That looks better. So now I've got a graphical presentation of revenue by month. So there's a lot of options that you can do with pivot tables and pivot charts. There's a lot of resources on the net in regards to pivot tables and pivot charts, or you can always take classes in this stuff. It's highly recommended. You cannot be a hosted client for Ajera and do this. You have to have the software in the database installed on your own servers in order to do this type of live linking. So now, if I want to store my password, I can just hit the connection properties. I'm accessing that through the data menu, refresh all, and then the connection properties. There are some options like enable refresh the data when opening the file. That might be a good one for you. Back here on the definition tab, this is where I can save my password. I get a little bit of a warning message about how my security might be compromised. You should pay attention to that. And perhaps if you're doing this, password the workbook. And then if I go to the authentication settings, I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to click none here and basically use the stored information or information stored in the connection string to connect to the data source. And click OK, and click OK. And now when I come back in, it's not going to ask me to for a password here because it is stored with this particular data set. So this is number 1 and 2 examples or uses that I do live linked with Ajera are for Gantt charts, the project team, and financial statements with the accounting team. Some of the other reporting tools, Fit the Bill Better widgets came onto the scene a couple years ago. That's actually a pretty decent reporting tool. But when it comes to financial statements, the financial statement designer leaves a little bit to be desired for me. It's not graphical in any way, and it's pretty rigid and elementary in how we put things together, and a little clunky. It's not as eloquent as Excel, and that's why I like to show you how to do live linked Excel workbooks. Number 1 use for the accounting people would be financial statements, and the number 1 use for the project team would be Gantt charts, simply because Gantt charts typically need to be printed on large paper, and that cannot be done within the Ajera program. That's it for showing you Excel in a live linked environment with Ajera. Again, my name is Mike Brennan. You can find me at unlockthedata.com. I'm happy to help you create views to work with your financial statement data and assist you in any way that I can. Thank you again, and watch for future videos.